Welcome everyone to the whys and hows of EL Civics Needs Assessment. My name is Lori Howard. I'm CASA's Program Specialist Coordinator, specializing in EL Civics. And I'm excited to talk to you today about EL Civics Needs Assessment. The slides will be posted on the CASA's website, as well as the consortium links that we are presenting for today. Let me just tell you our goals and objectives for today. By the end of this session, participants will be able to identify the purpose of EL Civics Student Community Needs Assessment, identify best practices of EL Civics Student Community Needs Assessment, and identify resources for these EL Civics Needs Assessments. And the reason I've sort of expanded the title to Student Community Needs Assessment is because we are assessing the needs of the whole school community at once, and then taking those needs and using them to select our civic objectives and additional assessment plan. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. So these are our objectives for today. And I'd like you to take a little piece of paper next to you. You don't need to share this with me at any time, but I would just like you to characterize your understanding of EL Civics Student Community Needs Assessment at this moment from 1 to 5. Just put a number down. Number 1 meaning I don't know much, and number 5, I'm an expert. And at the end, I will ask you to rate yourself again and see if you feel more confident in your knowledge. So again, you don't need to share this with me, just for your information about your understanding of EL Civics Student Community Needs Assessment. And if you do have any questions at any point, you can either unmute yourself or put your questions in the chat. So let me start by talking about why California does EL Civics in general. And it started around the year 2000. We got money from the federal government, part of the AFLA, Adult Family Literacy Act. And at that time, we had a different name, but now we call it the Workforce. Well, we used to call it the Workforce Investment Act, and now it's WIOA. But when we got the money, we realized that we already had a system of competency-based education in our adult education system, where students learned skills they needed to access their communities. And the grant, the WIOA grant from the federal government, really was a similar grant in terms of helping students access the communities. But we realized that we could use these monies to further our competency-based education, further connect language to the real world, and utilize a performance-based assessment, so that even though we were teaching students how to access the community, we really weren't assessing them in doing that. So if we added performance-based assessment, where students would demonstrate what they learned through the tasks that they would be doing, like completing a job application or doing a job interview, for example, we would be able to evaluate how learners use the language and measure their learner success in the community. And so we use this money to develop such a system. And then when new monies were added in 2014, we, although there was always a workplace component, we had more monies to then connect learners to the workplace, and we connected our COAP system, our civic objectives and additional assessment plan, to these new monies for ILCE 243 funds. So these are the 7 requirements for EL Civics in California, and the first one is develop and administer a school community student needs assessment. So that's the one we're going to talk about. This one informs all of the other 7. That's why we're focusing on it today, because it's very important. So not only do you need to develop and administer a school community needs assessment, but you need to complete a summary form telling this needs assessment that you did. And we're going to talk about that, and we're going to show examples about that too. So why do we do needs assessment? I think this is a very important part of our EL Civics program, because we want to assess the students' needs and teach what the students want to learn. And research shows that successful programs continually assess the needs, interests, and language skills of their learners by conducting ongoing needs assessment. Now, the requirement in California is just do it once a year, but you're welcome to do it more often, but you are required to do it at least once per year in order to have a successful program and meet the needs of our students. We have also learned that persistence, students come back to class, the persistence of the students relates to the needs assessment, relates to the fact that we're teaching what students want to learn. If students are learning what they need to use in their communities, in their child's schools, at the workplace, in their communities in general, then they're going more apt to come to class and to learn more, and then to be able to access their communities more effectively. So let's look at an example of what I'm talking about here. What is a student needs assessment? And I'm going to put in the chat the link to these materials so that you can access them. It's a Google Drive document I've made for you, and it's on the slides. The slides are also in this link. Let's see, I don't think I've copied it effectively. Let me try again. Yeah, maybe this is it. Well, I guess this must be it. Okay, so you can access that, but I'm going to show you one of the items that you can find in this Google Drive. So this is a needs assessment from Fremont Adult and Continuing Education. Anna Demores sent it to us, and she uses a Google Drive. This is a very simple survey done for beginning low students. They ask the students to type in their name and email address, and then they choose 6. Now I'm just showing part of it, but students just click on the thing they want to learn, and they choose 6 of however many there are here. I think there's about 12 or 15. So beginning low students are using the picture. They see the computer and they go, oh, I want to learn more about computers. And they would select that one, or education or emergencies. You can see how simple this is for beginning low students. It's going to have a picture and a word. So this is an example of a needs assessment. So let's talk about how you develop and administer a school community needs assessment, because that's what we're going to be doing. So again, the requirement is a yearly school community student needs assessment. It's required for WIOA 2 funding, both 231 funding and the workplace IELCE 243 funding. So agencies need to assess general civic participation topics for their general classes, the 231 funded classes. And then they need to do a workforce related needs assessment for those students who are interested in job training, and that you're using 243 funds for those classes. And the results of the needs assessment that you do helps you and informs the selection of our COAPs, our civic objectives and additional assessment plans. That's how you choose them. So you're not supposed to be doing the same ones every year. You're supposed to be doing a needs assessment that informs the selection. So this is a description of the needs assessment. Again, the general needs assessment assesses the needs of the student community as a whole. So if you have 500 students in your class, you would like to try to assess 3/4 of them at least. And you're going to ask them, basically what EL Civics information they need and want to learn. If you're doing a workforce training needs assessment, you want to find out which career paths students want to follow. And you want to give them a needs assessment that relates to the jobs in your community. And we're going to talk more about that. So they may want to be a welder, but if welders are not needed in your community, you wouldn't include that in your needs assessment because either there are no jobs available or there's no training available. So make sure, and we'll talk about this later, that the assessment relates to jobs in the community and training that is available to students. So we assess the community as a whole and those students who want to be in workforce training, but it's also possible to add an optional classroom needs assessment. So we assess the community as a whole, the 500 students, we select, let's say 3 to 10 co-ops. And then it's possible, if you want to do this, to, at the beginning of each class, say, these are the 10 or the 6 we have selected, which do you want to do as members of this specific class? And you could do that each time. Some schools decide to have the whole school do all the co-ops, and they say, you know, co-op A is done in the fall semester, co-op B is done in the winter semester or winter quarter, and co-op C is done in the spring, so that everyone in the school is doing the co-op at the same time. That's another way to do it, but it's also possible to do a classroom needs assessment of the ones that have been chosen. Which one does this specific class want to do? Any questions so far? Okay. So school community needs assessments can be done on paper. So you can just have a paper that you give to students, or they can be done online, electronically, via SurveyMonkey or Google Forms, or whatever system you have at your agency. Certainly a Google form helps students utilize their digital literacy skills. And it also helps you as an administrator or teacher to tally the results a little bit more easily. But either way works. So this is how we suggest doing it. And again, you have the prerogative of doing it the way you want to. But we have 7 competency areas. The last one is the workplace competency area. I should have added here, but these are the 6 main ones for all students. And we suggest that you choose 2 to 4 objectives from each of these areas. So 2 to 4 in consumer economics, in community resources, in health, in government and law, in transition and employment. And I can show you where you can find the different lists of co-ops. It's on the EL Civics main webpage, and let me give you the link to that in the chat. So there's the link. You can find this list in the middle gray box, pre-approved civic objective list, basically. And I suggest you select 2 to 4 of these. Use the information you know about your students to decide which ones you think they might be interested in. And then you are honing in on that selection by giving the students the opportunity to choose. Okay, so even for the lowest level students, they could have perhaps 12 choices, and for higher level students, perhaps 24. Remember, there are 59 civic objectives, so you're trying to narrow it. I wouldn't suggest in general that you offer all 59 of them, although you could. But a couple of things, you have to be ready to be able to offer that instruction. So you might need to narrow what you offer students to choose from, depending on how able you are to offer that instruction and develop the instruction and the needs assessments. I'm going to tell you a little bit later about our EL Civics Exchange, and we are putting new instructional materials on that as we speak every month, new materials. So that might help you in widening the possible offerings you can offer your students, because you would have instructional materials to go along with that. And as it says here, the number of objectives used in a needs assessment may depend on the level of the students. Again, I would probably offer a smaller number to lower level and a higher number to higher level students. Okay, these are some samples of the civic objectives that we offer. Again, in these areas that I mentioned before, consumer economics, one of co-op or civic objective 2 has to do with resolving a consumer complaint. Health civic objectives 26 has to do with accessing free or low-cost medical or healthcare services. Civic objective 45 has to do with individual rights, laws, and ordinances. The transition one that's most popular is 52. It has to do with soft skills, very popular one and very important one in school, in jobs, in the community to have soft skills, and that's number 52. And then for the workforce training, those who are interested in early childhood education might choose workplace training in the 70s. This happens to be civic objective 70. We have 5 civic objectives in the workforce training area. Okay, so in terms of developing a school community needs assessment, you want to use the chosen objectives to design your assessment. And again, beginning level learners need a picture-based assessment tool with simplified words, and intermediate advanced level students could have pictures and phrases. The objective I just showed you on the previous slide, these kinds of objectives are for teacher use only, not for use by students. So in designing our needs assessment form, we would not use what I just showed you. We would be more apt to use something like this. So as I showed you the example before, use a bank, and various visuals about banking would be appropriate for a beginning low student. And again, we don't use the civic objective for this one, civic objective 1.
I have a quick question, Lori.
Sure, go ahead.
So for the assessment, can we do an assessment that it can be used from beginning low to advanced, so it can incorporate the pictures with words, or do we need to do different assessments for the levels?
No, you can use this one for the lower level, but I have to say that it's perhaps not as informative to the higher level student if you do that. So, but you can do that, and I'm going to show you some examples of it.
Okay.
But just be aware, so for beginning low, they would really need this.
Yeah, because I was thinking of something like that, but also with more information for the more advanced students.
So it would be great if you could give different forms. Let's say use one form for beginning low to beginning high students, and then another form for intermediate low to advanced. But on the other hand, I understand the constraints of that. So it depends on how you do it. If you do it electronically, you might be easily able to separate the levels. If you don't do it electronically, then you might need to use a more simplified form. But if beginning low students are involved, it would have to be at this level, right?
Yeah.
Right, good question. So I just wanted to say that I have developed this civic objective shortened descriptions, and you can find it in the resources list that I already put in the chat, but I'll put it in the chat again. This list is here, and it's also on the EL Civics page of the CASAS website, but you'll notice the civic objective is here on the left. And then this is the TE version. If you go into TE and you see what the students have learned, you'll see this one. But then I've made up possible differences for beginning low to beginning high. So money and banks, financial services. So I guess it would be possible to put, money in banks, or use a bank at the top and then financial services at the bottom. If you think your students in that one visual that advanced level students would see both words, and perhaps the lower level students would perhaps even just look at the picture or see the more common words of money and banks. So try it out and then ask students if they understood it. Okay. So, but please use this chart so that you can get an idea. And again, you don't have to use these words. This is just some suggestion about how to make it more simplified. So for beginning low and beginning high in civic objective 2, problems with buying things, and then for the higher level, consumer complaints. So consumer complaints would be a difficult concept or difficult words for beginning low, but perhaps this would be more easy for them. Okay, so I wanted to show you some examples. So again, I showed you this one for that this agency uses for beginning low. So they do differentiate for their students, the different levels. This one is a multi-level one. So they have translated it, the directions here. And I assume they are expecting the lower level students to just look at the visual, or maybe this sentence here. And I know it's a little bit small. This would be too much for them, but hopefully they can ignore it. And maybe they are instructed to ignore it depending on how they are given instructions to use it. So Cindy Gravwag of Castro Valley Adult and Career
This
Education.
is similar to what we're doing, Lori. So I just wanted to make sure it was fine. We're doing a multi-level. We are putting the picture first, actually on the top, and then we're putting like the wording in the bottom.
Great.
And then we are translating it as well.
Great. And I would think, so this sentence here is perhaps too complex, and I agree with you, maybe that should go at the bottom. So the first thing the beginning level student sees is the picture, and then the basic words, and then perhaps a sentence afterwards if it's a multi-level class. So Cindy says that she includes a minimum of 6 options to select from. And again, that may be limited by how much you can offer. Okay. And then she uses the response data and additional teacher input to determine the co-ops for the next year. So certainly after you get the student community needs assessment back, the teachers need to help assess, which co-op, because each co-op has different information. So even if you use the general, use a bank, there's a lot of possible ways to teach that civic objective. And then you would like to have your coordinator and ESL teachers input on which they think might be useful to the students. Good, and thank you so much for sharing what you're doing. Was that Cindy, I think, that was talking?
Yes, Lori, it was me.
Thank you so much. Okay, good. So let us move on then. This is another one, again, from Grossmont Union High School District. So they're asking students to choose 3 things. And we suggest rather that some people do it in number order, choose, your priorities, but really that's a difficult way to do it. And I would suggest that you just have students make a check mark or X in the one that they're doing. When you go on the website, on the Google Doc Drive, you'll see the whole thing. I just put an excerpt of it here. And again, this says it's multi-level, but this is pretty difficult for our students here. So we would like you to simplify the language and perhaps use that form that I mentioned to you. But I think this is really good. What do you want to learn? What do you need to know? Choose 3 things. But we want to consider about being as simple as possible. And I think, I did share the link. Is this not coming out as a link for you? Let's see. There.
No.
Oh, it's not. I see that. Okay, I wonder why that is. It's a link for me. See if I can get that for you. Thank you for mentioning it. Well, I will give it to you at the end. If it's not here, it's weird that it's not coming out as a link. But I see that there we go. Let me try it again. Okay. So I'm going to share this with you so you can see it, and then hopefully I can get the link also. So this is it, and let me, whoops, to clear that. I love to use the annotations, but it doesn't always work. Let me see if I can, somehow when I copy this link, it's not, there it is. Yay, okay, I did it. Let me try to put it down here too.
Thank you.
Sure, I tried to do that before, but for some reason, when I put it in a Word document, it goes to this other thing, but hopefully you can scroll back to it there. And this is what you have here. So it's all there for you. Let me reshare. And thank you for letting me know. Let's see. Now I can't find my, my presentation. There it is. Okay. So we were just on this one from Grossman High. Thank you, Sybil, for sharing it with us. And then this is a level 5 version that they use at Case Campbell. So they have one for each of their levels, and they want to challenge their students. They're not using any visuals here, but you'll notice that they did simplify the language of the objective. Talk to your pharmacist about the medicine you're taking and learn to read medicine labels. So that's certainly something a level 5 student could read and understand. It is not the language of the civic objective that teachers look at. So you might want to look at this one. Again, this is what people sent me that they're using. You should, take it and adjust it for your school, your students, your idea of what your students can understand. So don't just take it and say, oh, this is how I have to do it. Feel free to adjust these. And thank you, everyone who shared. So I've given you some examples of the needs assessments. And so again, just going over the quote unquote rules here, what the procedures about what you would do. You want to administer the needs assessment to the majority of your learners so you get an idea of the school community needs. You're going to ask learners to pick 3 to 5, more or less, and it's up to you, of their topics of interest, what they want to study for the next year. You're going to tally the results, and you're going to use those results to choose 3 to 10 objectives. Again, if you're a small school, you might use 3 or fewer, or up to 10 if you're a larger school. If you need to choose fewer than 3 or more than 10, you need to ask permission of your CDE consultant. If you've asked permission in the past, you don't need to ask again unless the number changes. So if you've asked for 13 and now you want to do 14, yes, you need to ask for permission. But if you're doing 13, even if you change the ones you're selecting, no worries. You can just, your original approval works. Okay, once you choose the civic objectives, then you need to review all the co-ops available to you. And you may decide that you like a certain co-op, but you want to revise it. This is a dynamic system. You can revise it. You need to get approval for that revision, but we appreciate that you want to adjust it to meet the needs of your learners. So you're not restricted to the co-ops in the pre-approved system, but you can use them if they meet the needs of your students. If they don't, you can choose one, you can change one task, you can change all the tasks, and the CASA staff is here to help you. So you just need to email elcivics@casas.org. I'll put that in the chat to request revising a co-op. Okay, and it's a simple system and we help you with it. The basic thing we need is a brief description of the tasks you want to change or write new. Okay, so then once you have reviewed all of them, so you can have an idea of what the content is, then you're going to select the co-ops that meet the needs of the students in content, level, and type of assessment. So some agencies only want to do written. They don't have the facility to do oral tasks. We know oral tasks are important for English learners. So if we can do them, that's a great choice, depending on the content. If you're doing an interview, job interview, for example, of course, it would have to be oral. So the content needs to meet the level and the needs of your students, the level and the type of assessment. And then once you've done all that, you need to complete a needs assessment summary form. I have the link here, and I'm going to hopefully give it to you in the chat. It may or may not work. Let's see if it works. If not, I have a sample here. No, it's not coming up. Let's go to it too. Let's go to that form. I think I can link to it from here. And when you get the slides, and the slides are in the Google folder now, you have that link for sure. And let me share this with you. And it's one of the slides also. So I just went to this link and I will try to put it in the chat for you as well. This is the form that you need to fill out. And it's a fillable form and you just need to keep it on file at your school. There's the link. In case your CDE consultant might ask you for it. You basically just put the agency name, etc. And then you write a paragraph. In 1 or 2 paragraphs, describe the process. So how many students did you survey? What was the form? You attach the form to this or describe it. what were the results? 100 students chose Civic Objective 3, 95 students chose Civic Objective 33, whatever it is. So you describe it briefly here and keep it on file. And I'm going to show you an example of that. Okay, in a second, I'll show it to you. So again, upon finishing it, you need to fill out this form and keep it on file. And then I just talked about all of this, but these are some bullet points that tell you what I just said. So you have it here in writing for when you go back and look at this, okay? So let's see the summary form. So again, this is the form that I showed you. It's a fillable form, and then you can save it as a PDF and keep it on file electronically, or you can print it out and put it in a paper file, whatever you want to do. This is an example of the one that Case filled out, Campbell Adult Education, and Jennifer sent it to us, her the ESL coordinator, so you can just get an idea of what she wrote. Okay, so we have 2 types of surveys, and then they do one for each level, and she describes it. And so they happen to do it for beginning low, beginning high, and then looks like they do intermediate low to advanced, as we talk about. And she has fewer options, 12 options for the low levels and 17 options for the higher levels. So again, this is just how she does it and what she writes, just to give you an example. And this is, she wrote actually more than a couple of paragraphs, so that's good. And then just to show you, because she does it electronically, she's able to have all these statistics and pinpoint that 38% of students chose 28.5, and it looks like she surveys not just with the Civic Objective, but with the specific co-op, which is something you could do as well. Have your teachers decide which co-ops and then survey with the specific content of the co-op. That's fine. Okay, and so this is how they chose their Civic Objectives, with the majority of students selecting those. She writes a chart and talks about the top vote getters, and she plans out which quarter they're going to be taught in. It looks like the whole school does it, or certain levels do it. So the first quarter, the low levels don't do one, the higher levels do, and they do the same one. And maybe that just assists in helping teachers have the curriculum they need, etc. Quarter B, everybody, or these 2 levels, do emergencies, because I guess that was what they chose. The 2 middle levels do health, etc. So she puts it out in the chart so everybody can see it. And then here she has the selection for the year. Again, this is just an example of what you could do. And thank you, Jennifer, for sharing. Now let's talk about, any questions about the general? We've been talking really about the general needs assessment for 231 funded programs. Any questions about that? So let's move on to our workplace needs assessment. So this is a little different because, again, as I mentioned earlier, it needs to relate to jobs. So you may have already done these things, but if you haven't, you need to start here. Let me grab my annotation. Okay, so you need to start here, survey community for job opportunities. So we want to train students in a career or job that they can get in our own communities. So we need to, if you're starting from scratch, you would survey the community for job opportunities. You can use your workforce investment board. You can just see what's around you. Sometimes your agency might have a advisory committee, and you could ask them what jobs are available in your community. Then you want to think about, of those jobs that are available, which job training your agency or a partner agency can offer, because this may be limited to the teachers that you can hire or get, the teachers that are have credentials in career technical education. So although there may be a need, you may not be able to supply that need, or maybe your supply that training. Maybe your partner agency can, maybe a community college near you or an adult school near you has that training, and you could collaborate with them. So these funds, the 243 IELCE funds, are intended to use agencies which collaborate together. So that's something you can look at. Once you know which job training is available to you, either in your own agency or with a partner agency, then you want to get your CTE and ESL teachers together to discuss which students might benefit most from this training and be able to participate most effectively. So we may not offer welding to our beginning low students. We may need to offer that to our intermediate or advanced students. We could perhaps offer another training to our lower level students, depending. So you need to figure that out first. Then do the needs assessment. We don't want to offer welding to the beginning low student and not, or offer them the needs assessment in that area when they cannot participate. So you might want to limit it to, again, to the level of student who can participate in the training that you're offering a needs assessment. Really important to do this needs assessment. I had one agency offer a training, but none of their students were interested in that training. And so they did planning and they did the instructional development, and then no one attended. So this needs assessment is really important. Okay, so once you develop the needs assessment, you administer it to the learners and the appropriate learners, depending on their level. And then you use that information again to select the COAPs and select the training that you're going to be offering. Right now we have COAPs. You can use the general COAPs. Certain ones are designated for 243, and there's a list at the Civics website I can show you that tells you which ones are designated for 243. So you can use any of the 243 designated ones in a workplace class, but we also have very specific ones, one in accounting, one in building and construction, one in at least one in early childhood education, information technology, healthcare, and manufacturing. Those are our levels now. We're about to add one, we hope, in custodial technician. So that will be number 76. So again, if you're doing specific training, we really encourage you to use these job-specific COAPs, but any one is open to you. And let me go to that link. I'll put the Yale Civics web page again link, in the chat, and I'll show you where this is. I got it, the whole thing. Let me try it again. There we go. There we go. Okay, and you should be very familiar with that link. And I'm going to do a new share and take you to that link. Let me go here first. There we go. And the new share here, there it is. So this is the Yale Civics webpage, and the list I'm wanting you to look at. Whoops. It's right here. So let me just give you a little tour of the Yale Civics website. These first four sections are the most important ones: your pre-approved additional assessment list, your selection process, what your agency has selected, and then what other agencies have selected. And then in this first section with a gray bar are a lot of documents that are really important to you. And the first one is the, this is your information about community needs assessment. You can go there. But the one I wanted to talk to you about was this one, the correlation, because this list, and hopefully you're seeing it. Let me see if you are. I'm sharing it. This list shows you here, this little sword tells you that it is 243 funded. So there's lots of ones in the general list that are 243 funded, 11, 14, you can see it here. So be sure that the COAPs you decide to use for your training, your workforce training, are 243 funded. Any questions about that? Oh, I just wanted to show you this picture of Castro Valley's needs assessment, again, they're working with higher level students here. They're asking for their name. They want to know if they're working now and what kind of job if they're looking for a job in the next year. And then again, are you interested in careers in childcare, education, or working with children? So, and they give examples of the kinds of jobs that would be available. So you can see that this would be a higher level needs assessment, and for lower level students, you would use the picture system that we talked about already. Any questions about workforce or workplace needs assessment? Okay, let's go on to our resources. I just want to show you again the EL Civics webpage that I just showed you. There's a whole section about needs assessment, and it has this document, School Community Needs Assessment Requirement, just gives you a brief description of it. There's an overview of needs assessment. There's an example of a low-level needs assessment, and I've given you the Google Drive folder, which has a lot more and newer ones. And then the last thing is the needs assessment summary form that you can see there. That's the last item here. Okay, and that you can download that. And then there's some outside links about needs assessment in general, how important it is. And so I suggest you look at these too, if you have some time to understand needs assessment a little bit more in depth.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So essentially, we're doing two needs assessment, one for the 231s and then one for the IET or IELCE, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Because those students are actually accessing training, and you want to see what kind of training they want to access. Okay, any other questions? So I guess you could say if they've already accessed the training and they're on a path, I guess you could make it specific to the specific co-ops they were interested in. But the workplace, the one I showed you is more of a general idea of what kind of training they want, and then the related co-ops related to that. So any other questions? Or if you'd like me to show you anything on the CASAS website, I'd be happy to do that. So why don't you take a second then to characterize your understanding? I hope your number has gone up, but maybe it has, maybe it hasn't. You don't need to share it with me. Please, on a piece of paper, rate yourself from 1 to 5 in what you think of your knowledge of EL Civics Community Needs Assessment right now. And then I also just want to for you to think about what you'll do with this information, because I'm sure you're not the only one who needs to have this information. So I hope you think you'll be sharing it with your other staff members. And I also want to give you the evaluation. I know you need to jump out. Thank you so much for attending. But before you do, if you can get the link to the evaluation so that you can evaluate the training for your purposes, I'd really appreciate if you'd fill that out. And then I just want to review that our objectives today were to identify the purpose of the EL Civics Student Community Needs Assessment, look at some best practices in terms of the samples that you got from other agencies. Again, nothing I showed you is the perfect one, and I hope you'll use them to inform what you might do. And then I gave you some resources about needs assessment. Any last questions? Okay. Remember, you can always contact me. Here's my contact information, lbhoward@casas.org. You can also write to elcivics@casas.org. And if you would look back to the link I gave you, the Google Drive link, so that you can access those resources. Here it is again. Let me get it, and I'll put it in the chat one more time for you to access those resources if you would like to. Thank you so much for attending. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you filling out the evaluation. And please contact me if you have any further questions about Yale Civics student needs assessment. Thanks a lot.